in Romans chapter 14, starting in verse 5. One person judges one day above another. Another judges every day alike. Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind. He who regards the day regards it for the Lord, and he who eats for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God. And he who does not eat for the Lord, he does not eat and gives thanks to God. For not one of us lives for himself, and not one dies for himself. For if we live for the Lord, or if we die for the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. Okay, we'll stop there. And does it feel like we're repeating ourselves? I think it does feel like that.
Really, the whole chapter 14, really one subject.
One subject, right. It really is. Although I don't think it's a flat subject, but rather there's a dimension behind it on each one of those nuances. I think sometimes I look at it's because humans, mankind, has this great tendency to say, yeah, but what about? And we look for those cracks, excuses for, well, he never said this, he never applied this, type of thing. And I think that's why he's trying to make sure the whole surface is covered with it. But it does feel repetitive to me.
This section in my Bible, the way they have little headings, is called Principles of Conscience. And this, to me, this chapter almost describes the New Testament in one aspect. That of why you don't have to follow all the Mosaic laws. It's your relationship and your thought process to God is your conscience, if you want to use that term, should dictate whether you should eat pork or not, for instance. But this is also probably the book that's most, perverted is the right word, used as an excuse of why it's okay to do whatever they want to do. Oh, it's between me and God. I'm not following your rules. I don't need to be on church on Sunday. I can be worshiping God and on the golf course or out fishing or whatever. So this one book has, I'm not going to say caused problems, but is used so many different ways. And I think inappropriately. But to justify behavior one way or the other. That's just my...
Yeah. Is... that we talked about it last week. Last week. But there are matters that are important.
Yeah.
Things that are absolutes.
Yeah, the fundamentals.
The fundamentals.
Of the faith.
Big stuff versus little stuff is what I call it.
And let me dare ask it this way. So is there those fundamentals, is it worth breaking fellowship over?
Fundamentally, yeah. Yes.
Right?
Or hopefully the person changes their mind, but yeah, you do draw a line on the fundamentals. If you typed in on the internet, what are the fundamentals of the Christian faith, you could find different people categorized maybe in a list of 6 or a list of 10, but even without that, you could sit right here and come up with those fundamentals, the list, the authority of the Word, Jesus, born as a man, death, burial, and resurrection. You could
Grace alone.
And those, if you don't hold to those, you're not a Christian.
When you say break fellowship with, what do you...
I mean, separate yourself from them. You no longer associate with them. You do not...
Certainly in the church, yeah, you would draw a circle around. They're not a Christian. So, I mean, you either convert them, but they're not.
Yeah, I think that's
where you're going, yeah.
Right. So is there ever a time when we just say we write a person off? Or is there, or are you talking about a different relationship?
The whole aspect, from my point of view, is where do you draw the line of one breaking that fellowship?
I think we established that right there is you wouldn't pretend they're a Christian, you wouldn't.
No, oh, absolutely,
And you
yeah.
wouldn't make them a member of your church.
But would you treat them as a leper, where you're yelling, unclean, unclean, and you keep them out of your social area? You don't associate with them
Well, you would
whatsoever.
treat them as any other non-Christian,
Right.
that you help and try to show the love of God and yada, yada, yada,
Yeah.
try to convert them or,
Yeah.
give them the truth, but you would not trust them alone with your kids, so to speak, proverbially. But you don't avoid them
Or
necessarily.
shun, or shun,
Or
or
shun.
whatever. I think that's where our responsibility, that's where our responsibility as believers in showing them love and allowing what God has done in us to be a reflection of Him to those people. It's a different relationship, I would think, rather than a breaking of, you breaking a fellowship as, I no longer have fellowship with a fellow believer in that sense, but as far as just, I don't want anything to
But
do
yet the
with
Bible talks about, dusting off the dust off your shoes and leave them.
Or throwing pearls before swine.
Yes.
That means, there is a point, you don't, arguing doesn't get you.
No,
there. So if it comes into
absolutely,
that,
right.
you don't throw pearls
Yes.
before swine, you take the dust off your shoes and move on. That's a line where somebody's being rebellious, argumentative, trying to win, but in general, you treat them as a neighbor, not as a brother.
Exactly, that's great, that's a good word.
Would you
Yeah.
treat them actually even more different than a stranger? I want to say this.
Probably because as a stranger, you don't know where they stand, so you're asking open-ended questions, if you will, overtly or even subertly, where you stand and, sharing. It's like you have a field that is fallow, you're trying to decide where to plant, as opposed to one that's, rocks, you've got to handle it differently.
Hmm.
So it's just, I think you do handle them differently, but still in a loving, hopeful way.
Interesting. Okay. Those were not leading questions, they were questions.
She got diverted because of Jay, sorry about that.
So we begin in 5. We talk about this day, and I think we pretty well convinced ourselves that it's regarding the Sabbath when he says that, and that the Sabbath was one of those. For some people, was a trigger day. If you did anything that violated the Sabbath, any kind of work, any kind of activity that was not approved of. It was a judgment to hell, if you will. You were a bad person. So
I'm sorry, if you look back, that's exactly, Jesus tried to correct it. That's what the Pharisees, a lot of the stuff that they got them
Right.
was trying to,
right, is it
their own man-made laws.
right? Is it okay to on the Sabbath heal someone?
Right.
Those kind of things. In our society today, we go, yeah, we don't care what
Sure.
day of the week is. Someone's sick or hurt, you need to help them out. So yeah, it was a significant point in why. That's the second example. One about food, that was the early one, and then about this day of the two biggies here. About them judging a day, one is better, or what does he say? I lost it again. One day above another. Another judges every day. Mine has the word alike. I don't know if you guys have that. Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind, and I like that phrase. What do you think that means, to be fully convinced in his own mind?
Satisfied.
Satisfied? Okay. To the point of, I will fight you on this. I will stand my ground on this. Is that kind of convinced?
I think it has to do, being can be inconsistent, you know, setting your anchor in something and not being tossed to and fro by every whim of doctrine that comes along,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
But Paul accused Peter of doing that, right?
right,
In regards to the Gentiles.
right, right. Kind of
Right, about eating with the
use on
Gentiles and
one
then,
side, yeah.
yes.
Okay. It goes on in 6 to talk about, in regards to the day and why it's the whys behind it now. He who regards the day regards it for the Lord. It's not he regards it for himself. That does kind of bring to mind a lot of, do we really do things that are for the Lord, or do we do things because it's tradition, it's culture, it's, you know, mama and daddy did it, so we're going to do it,
Or for the view of other people.
or the view of other people to
Or convenience.
convenience, that kind of stuff. Do we? I mean, it's just a challenge here. Is do you really do it for the Lord? Do you? For example, let's take a Sunday just as that. Do you wake up on Sunday saying, "Lord, this is your day, and I will glory in you," or do you wake up saying, "I've got to get to the church. I've got to get the equipment set up. I've got to get," you know, it's a work. It becomes
Yep.
something you have to do, kind of thing. I guess I'm talking more to myself here. And he goes on into the others, and he who eats for the Lord, because he goes right back up to verse 1, he gives thanks to God, and who does not eat for the Lord, does not eat and give thanks to God. 7, for not one of us lives for himself. Interesting phrasing. Not one of us lives for himself.
One says lives to himself.
Yours has to himself?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. What does that phrasing mean? I mean, you got to tie it in with the rest of that verse, and not one dies for himself. But what is he trying to say? This would be a great little Hallmark card thing. You just put on a card.
It was interesting when Jay said it to himself, doesn't make it, I mean, it's sort of the same words, but
I think
the idea is that I think, because especially after 8, that when you do something, you're doing it for yourself. Either to honor yourself, not necessarily for gratification for yourself, but you're doing it to honor, I'll use that phrase, for yourself as opposed to honor God or something else. You know, I guess it's like you in your relationship with your wife. Is, are you doing something because you want to? Or are you doing it because you're trying to do something nice for her? Yeah, that's easy, kind of brings it down a notch, a little easier to understand, I think, at least in my mind, than something nebulous for God. What does he need peas with his dinner for? Where I don't like peas, and my wife does, so if I serve peas, it's because I'm doing it for her, not for me. You know, that type of thing. I think that's what they're kind of, what that verse is saying is that when you're doing something to honor yourself, I guess you could use any vice. If you're doing something to honor yourself is different than to please yourself. I guess that's kind of
to me it just says you are not the center of the universe.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the operative word there is us, right? Who is the us? The us is believers, right? And I think that makes all the difference in the world. If you are a believer, if you are a true believer, then this statement is true, right? That you don't live for yourself or you don't die for yourself.
Yeah.
You were bought by Christ, and
Yes.
your life is not yours.
Yes.
It belongs to God.
I think it's for everyone. I mean, if even if you're a non-believer, you don't die to yourself. I mean, God is still God.
Yeah, but you have no relationship.
Right.
So if you have no relationship, then it's all about you.
I can see from a secular point of view, they would look at it from that, and they have the same principle,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a true principle that no man is an island. Is the idea that the world one doesn't spin around you.
Yeah, that's what I
And
get
that's,
from it.
that's, and that applies whether it's secular or religious in thought here. It's a truism that can't be broken, no matter what you try to be your own man, your own thing. I'm only doing this for me, and the world works with me, not me with the world. And you don't get far that way with that. The reality will hit you it'll smack you down. Interesting. Hey, then he goes into that conditional here. For if we live for the Lord, or we die for the Lord. Another way of saying you're not in control. You may think you are. You may try to walk that way, but you're under God's timing.
Yes.
You can be as arrogant as you want, but you're under God's.
Yeah, and when you die, you're not going to judge yourself. The Lord's going to judge you.
Now, I will say, to keep it in context here, he is talking about Christians.
Yeah.
I mean, he is absolutely talking about Christians here. Although I do think the principle can apply outside of that, but he's definitely talking about the Christian groupies is who he's directing these comments to. Let's just visit again why he's even doing that. Why is Paul addressing this issue?
Jay, what did your title on the...
It says principles of conscience.
See, mine says, do not pass judgment on one another. It was the summation.
Yep. Hey, that's mine too. Exact
Oh,
same one.
okay. How
Yeah,
about that?
about that.
Man.
.com, bro.
Jeez.
It's quite a bit of different heading though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. The end of 8, we are the Lord's. It's almost like a battle cry. You know, when I first read that, we are the Lord's. You know, it's kind of like, remember the Alamo. It's, we are His, and that's part of our lordship
Sounds like that'd be a good
responsibilities.
song.
What?
Yeah, and say, we are the world.
We are
the Lord.
I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
Run with that.
Yeah.
Christian.
I'm going to make $1 million with that.
Well, I think the whole idea is that we don't need to get tied up in these things that are really insignificant, like what you eat, like whether you celebrate a day, what you wear, right? That our priority and our overriding thought should be that we are the Lord's, right? And that in that our conscience, within our conscience, how my relationship is with God is my relationship with God. It's not how Jay's relationship should be with God, right? And I think that's why the two titles are really, if you look at them, they're just both sides of the same coin, right? Don't judge, you worry about your conscience. You worry about your conscience, don't judge. So it's things of the conscience that you have to be convinced about for yourself. But when you become convinced about that for yourself, don't judge someone else because they've got to be convinced about it in the same way.
Right.
So they might think it's important to go to church on Sunday, and the other one may say, man, I work on Sunday, but I'm going to set aside Tuesday.
Right.
Don't judge him for that. But he's setting that aside, and all we can do is, we can just shoot a fruit. But
Let me take that example of not doing one deems Sunday as what you need to, and the other one says, no, I can't do it on day. I'm working. I'll do Tuesday. What about this situation? He doesn't do any day.
yeah,
Is that a disputable matter at that point?
I would think it's a concern.
It's a concern, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's maybe not, something you.
The point is, I guess to the question is, but there is a day that should matter,
Yeah,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Which one you pick is not what matters.
right.
It's that you need to set that time
Yes.
with the Lord.
And think about it, his audience here were believers, there's a mixture of Jewish and non-Jewish, so it goes back to that
Right.
conversation of,
Yep.
that being, bringing that baggage. of the
Exactly.
Jewish, belief that you had to regimentally, follow these. That is what he was writing about.
You're absolutely right. And to bring in what Jay had said much earlier about this gives people excuses to not do things that do matter. Because they are in theory, they are the weak in faith. And so we need to be on the lookout for that nuance different when they give an excuse, well, I don't have to be in the
Right.
church on Sunday.
Right.
So that comes back to the, kind of the works argument is what I call it, where you don't have to do works to be saved, but if you're saved, you want to do the works.
Yes.
I think it's the same thing with this type of thing. If you're truly saved, this is not a judgmental thing, this is not where this is going, then you would want to fellowship with other Christians. You would want to go to church. You would want to do these
Learn.
things
Yeah.
to honor God.
Yes.
So if you truly have a relationship, it will change you to where you will follow these things to honor Him. And whether it's a Tuesday or a Sunday, that's between you and God. I mean that literally, not
Yeah.
in an excuse way.
You almost got to go back to what's your motive,
Right.
what's your heart.
That's exactly right.
You know, if you're just using it, and and it's only between you and God and your conscience how you're using that, right? If you're just using it as an excuse,
Right.
you may be the only one that knows that. But that's about being convinced within your conscience, being fully convinced, and not just using it as an excuse that, oh yeah, I'm not going to go today. I'm just going to go on Tuesday. I'm just going to go on Wednesday or whatever. And you just use it as a workaround, right?
Yeah, how do we treat those people?
As weak in faith,
I think that's,
immature.
that's why really the best heading for this whole section would be to take your heading and combine it with
Yes,
his.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
about disputable matters, so it's judging, but we're talking about only this little narrow field of judging on disputable matters.
Yeah.
So the heading needs to be both.
What this
This
calls
is
to
a
mind
disputable matter.
for me is when they were going to stone the adulterers, and he said, all right, whoever is without sin cast the first stone. That's what that kind of calls to mind.
Still want to know when He wrote it in dirt, but that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About us not judging.
Even if you know even if you are more mature, you know it would be better to be a certain way. It's a disputable matter, so you just let it go.
Not that you don't discuss it with them or try to convert them.
Or ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Or like Jesus
Is
did.
there a
tell
reason
them,
why,
don't
there's a
do
reason
that.
why you don't come on Sunday mornings? And that's, but you do it in love, you don't do it in an accusing way,
Right.
but you do it in love as
Yeah.
as a brother in Christ.
Yeah.
And they may say, well, I work on Sundays,
Yeah, there you go.
or whatever, but I think that all goes back to building relationships, right? And in order to truly know somebody, you have to build those relationships with people. That's part of being in the family. That's part of being brothers and sisters in Christ, is we have those relationships.
Yeah.
So we do still need to hold people accountable.
Yes. There is an accountability, but it needs to, and, I mean, we're not gonna get too far into the extremes, but even Paul in Corinthians had one guy that he said he was having sexual relations that he shouldn't have, and put him out.
Yeah.
And so,
That's right.
but there's a way of doing that, and, as, like you said, we've been talking along, as unbelievers, our job is still, as believers, is to love them, share the gospel, continue to show them opportunities to come to repentance and faith.
When you said about accountability, I mean, there's one thing to hold someone accountable on an overt thing they're doing.
Yeah, it's not disputable.
Yeah, but should I be looking at your calendar and says, well, Wednesday you went over and did so, and you should have been here Wednesday
Right.
night?
Yeah.
And it's back to, you need to put your disputable heading with his,
Yeah.
judgment.
Don't
Because,
judge.
like, take that one, in First Corinthians, you know, Paul was reprimanding the church because they weren't dealing with something, and it wasn't disputable. He was,
Right.
having sex with his,
Well, they were proud about it, that was the thing.
And-
They were all like, oh, look at us, we're
We're progressive.
We're progressive, yeah, or something, I don't know.
yeah, exactly.
He's like,
They have rainbow flags.
yeah, so
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
point, yeah.
Yeah, you can find a church today being, featured as being, you know, poster child.
Yeah.
If they're, that open-minded, but they needed rebuking, and it wasn't disputable.
Yeah.
But here we're talking about matters that, you know, even if you know better, it's better to let it go, but instead of fight over it.
These were tough though, because, I mean, Sabbath for the Jews, that was everything,
Yeah, that's true.
as well as the meat things. It was, those are tough subjects.
From our perspective, from our history right now, those are disputable matters.
Yeah, but back
But
then.
back then, that was a non-negotiable.
Well, that's why, it's part of the reason why they crucified Christ, right? Is because he came against everything that they built their life on.
Yeah.
When he was trying to show them, you know, everything that you built your life on points to me, right? And that was, you know, that basically did it for them,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And so speaking of pointing to me, verse 9. To me, one of the hardest ones to fully explain. So that's why you guys are here, to explain it. For to this end Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord, both of the dead and of the living. I don't know about you, but it feels like that's a really deep verse.
You talking about the dead end living part?
Yeah.
Is the part that's hard to decode?
Yes, because the first part of the phrase, for this, to this end Christ died and lived again, hallelujah, right?
Right.
I've got,
I'm gonna guess maybe it's kinda like, Philippians 1:11, you know, eventually everybody's gonna recognize Jesus is Lord of all, right? Every knee will bow.
Right.
Philippians 1:11 says, but,
Yeah, I think
eventually.
whether you're a believer or not,
It's true whether you
Christ is
believe it or
Lord.
not.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if this is just Paul's way of summarizing everybody.
Everybody.
y'all.
All y'all?
All y'all.
Yeah.
This applies to all y'all.
This is all y'all.
That's what it's me.
this is really intriguing though, because the difference between judging someone and holding them accountable, like, you know, we're talking about where is that line? You know, what is disputable, what's not disputable? And that line seems to get blurred a lot of
I
times.
think you can, what would help you lay down that line is when he talks about you have to be fully convinced. And what that fully convinced, when we didn't really talk about it, is that you know the why behind it. You know the what, the why, the wherefore of this matter that you're discussing. That you know every aspect and from every point of view of why that issue is one way or the other. That's that fully convinced. It's being the master of a particular topic. Okay? And so
That'll help you decide whether it's fundamental or
Fundamental or
something
not.
that you don't need to really
exactly.
argue over.
Is knowing,
Yeah.
and knowing.
Yeah.
And the only way you really will know is
Wisdom.
what's in the standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. You need to know where to pick your battles. Look, everybody I go to church with and am friends with are peculiar.
How do you say that? I cannot believe that.
So, I'm used to looking back.
We are a peculiar people, that's true.
Used to looking the other way on certain things. Yeah.
Okay,
Think about that.
we're gonna land it there. What are you guys praying for?